When I was a child, I thought being ignored was normal. At every family gathering, every holiday, every major event, I was there, but only in the background. My sister, Sarah, the brilliant one, took center stage. My brother, Chris, the effortlessly successful one, had his path paved with gold. And me, I was just Michael. Growing up, I watched my parents pour everything into my siblings. When Sarah got accepted into an Ivy League school, they threw a celebration so grand it felt like a second Christmas. Friends, family, even distant relatives were invited. The whole house was lit up with joy. My parents glowed with pride, repeating, "Our daughter is going to an Ivy League," over and over again. Then it was Chris's turn. He followed in Sarah's footsteps, going to a prestigious graduate program. My parents bought him a new laptop, helped him move, paid his tuition, and covered his rent until he could stand on his own. Everything was handled. And me, I got into a decent state college. Nothing fancy, but a solid school. When I told my parents, they nodded, muttered something like, "That's great, Michael," and went back to their conversation. No party, no celebration. If we ordered takeout that night, I was lucky. I tried not to let it get to me. But as I got older, the differences became impossible to ignore. It wasn't just the attention, it was the money, too. Sarah's wedding? A $200,000 event with extravagant catering and guests flown in from out of state. Chris's education? Fully. Paid, along with rent assistance and student loan forgiveness. And me? When I was starting my first job, I asked my parents for help buying some necessary work equipment. They gave me $7,000. Now, don't get me wrong. $7,000 is a lot of money. But when you compare it to $200,000 for a wedding and everything they did for my siblings, it felt like a slap in the face. Like they were doing just enough to say they helped, but never more than that. The worst part wasn't even the money. It was how I always felt like an outsider in my own family. Every family dinner revolved around Sarah's latest job promotion or Chris's big plans. They would laugh, talk about their next vacations, their next home improvements, their next big purchases. And I would sit there, silently eating, trying to think of something to say, something that wouldn't be dismissed or ignored. But really, what could I say? Hey, I just finished a big project at work, and I'm still paying off. My car? They wouldn't care. Then one dinner changed everything. It was supposed to be a regular family dinner, but it turned into the night everything fell apart. As usual, Sarah and Chris dominated the conversation. Sarah casually mentioned her upcoming trip to Europe. "Oh, we're going for a few weeks," she said, swirling the wine in her glass. "Mom and Dad helped out with the expenses. It's just so nice." Chris chuckled. "Yeah, man. I don't know what we would have done without that $200,000 for the wedding." Emily, Chris's wife, laughed. "Seriously, thank God for your parents paying for everything." I sat there, staring at my plate, their words sinking in like daggers. They didn't even realize how privileged they were, how easy life had been for them. I clenched my fists under the table, my face heating up. And before I could stop myself, the words slipped out. "Must be nice." Silence. All eyes turned to me. Sarah furrowed her brows, confused and slightly annoyed. "What's that supposed to mean, Michael?" I exhaled sharply, my heart pounding. "It means that not all of us have things handed to us on a silver platter. Some of us actually have to work for what we need," Chris shrugged, leaning back in his chair with that smug grin of his. "Oh, come on, man. Mom and Dad helped you, too. Didn't they give you money for work stuff?" I laughed bitterly. "Yeah, $7,000, compared to hundreds of thousands for you two. That's not the same, and you know it." Mom, always the peacekeeper, tried to intervene. "Michael, we thought that's what you needed. We've always tried to be fair." Fair? I felt something snap inside me. "Fair?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You think this is fair? You gave them everything. You paved their roads while I had to build mine brick by brick, And now you want to act like it's equal? Dad shook his head. You're exaggerating this, Michael. No. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. You just didn't care about what I needed. You gave me the bare minimum so you could tell yourselves you helped. And with that, I walked out. I didn't turn back. That night, I realized something. I was done fighting for scraps. That dinner was the turning point. I threw myself into my work. I took on extra projects, stayed late, pushed harder than ever before. 6 months later, I was promoted. A year after that, I started my own business, a small tech startup focusing on software for small businesses. It wasn't easy. I lived frugally, cutting every unnecessary expense. Every dollar went into my business. And then, my breakthrough came. A local business owner referred me to his network, and suddenly, I had more clients than I could handle. I hired my first employee, then my second. 2 years after that family dinner, I was running a successful company, and that's when my family came back. First, Sarah showed up at my office. "Michael, this is amazing," she said, looking around. "Why didn't you tell us about all this?" I shrugged. "I've been busy." Then Chris called, inviting me to dinner to celebrate my success. I declined. For the first time, they were the ones on the outside looking in. A month after my family reached out for help, I still hadn't given them an answer. Something about the way they approached me didn't sit right. So, I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I hired a private investigator. I told myself, it was just to confirm their situation, to make sure I wasn't walking into another setup where they would take what they needed and then forget me again. But deep down, I think I already knew the answer. The truth? It was worse than I imagined. My parents weren't struggling. Their business was doing just fine. Better than fine, actually. They had just secured a major contract that would keep them afloat for years. But the real betrayal wasn't the lie about their failing business. It was the paper trail I found. For years, my parents had been moving money into secret accounts for Sarah and Chris. That $200,000 for Sarah's wedding, only a fraction of it actually went to the wedding. The rest had been placed into a high-yield investment account in her name, Chris's tuition. My parents hadn't just paid for his education. They had been building him a trust fund the entire time, something he could fall back on whenever he needed. Even Emily, Chris's wife, had a financial cushion thanks to them. And me? Nothing. Not. Only had they ignored me, they had actively ensured that I would always be behind my siblings. They had built safety nets for everyone but me. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. All those years of feeling like the odd one out, of struggling while they lived comfortably, of wondering if I was just being too sensitive. Turns out, I was right all along. This wasn't neglect. This was a choice, and I was done being the afterthought. I called my parents to meet me at my office. They arrived looking hopeful, probably expecting me to tell them how I would fix their imaginary problems. But when I laid out the documents in front of them, their faces drained of color. "What is this?" my father asked, his voice unsteady. I looked him dead in the eyes. "This is the proof that you lied to me, that you manipulated me, that you deliberately set me up to fail while ensuring Chris and Sarah had everything they needed." My mother started crying. My father rubbed his temples, sighing deeply. "Michael," he said, "it's not what you think. We saw you as the strong one. We knew you'd figure it out on your own. We didn't think you needed the help." I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "So that's your excuse? You thought I didn't need help, so you made sure I never got any?" "We didn't mean for it to hurt you this way," my mother whispered. "But it did," I said, my voice cold. "And here's the part where you realize that you can't fix it. Not with an apology, not with money, not with anything." They looked at me, their eyes pleading. "Michael, please." "No," I cut them off. "You made your choices. Now I'm making mine." I stood up, looking at them one last time. "Get out of my office, and get out of my life." For the first time in my life, I watched, as they were the ones being shut out. The moment they left, a strange feeling washed over me. Relief. For years I had been chasing their approval, hoping that one day they would finally see me as their equal. But now I realized I didn't need their validation. I never did. They were my family by blood, but that was where it ended. A family should lift you up, support you, and stand by you. Mine had done the opposite, so I chose something better. Over the next few months, I focused on the people who actually saw me, the friends who celebrated my success without jealousy, the colleagues who had become like brothers and sisters to me, the mentors who pushed me to be better. I built a new family, one that didn't require me to prove my worth, one that didn't make me feel like an afterthought. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. If you've ever felt like the forgotten child, if you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or pushed aside, know this. You don't need their approval. You don't need their love to be whole. You can build your own path, your own success, your own family, and trust me, it will be worth it. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.